this place only a few years ago. When I was first running for office in Chicago, I didn't know this, but I wish I had. When I was in Chicago, as I was campaigning, they'd look at my last name, and they'd say, "Oh, there's an Obama from the homeland running on the South Side, so he must be Irish, but I've never heard the Gaelic name Barack." But it pays to be Irish in Chicago. So while we were in Montreal, I had a chance to meet my 8th cousin, Henry, who's also known as Henry VIII. We knew he was my cousin because his ears flapped out, just like mine. I leafed through the parish logs where the names of my ancestors are recorded. I even watched Michelle learn how to pull a proper pint of black. Who's cheering for that? So it was a magical visit, but the only problem was it was far too short. A volcano in Iceland forced us to leave before we could even spend the night. So we've been eager for a chance to return to the Emerald Isle ever since. And this time we brought our daughters too. In particular, we wanted to come here, to Northern Ireland, a place of remarkable beauty and extraordinary history, part of an island with which tens of millions of Americans share an eternal relationship.
U.S. President Barack Obama there speaking in Ireland. 2 of Turkey's leading trade unions have called on their members to walk off the job today. The nationwide general strike comes after more clashes on Sunday between anti-government protesters and riot police in the capital Ankara. Now, police in Istanbul have fired tear gas to ward off demonstrators from returning to Taksim Square, which they have cleared by force. CNN's Carl Pennell brings us the latest.
Square now is basically clear of any protesters at all, and that is being held by riot police and security forces to ensure that no protesters, neither the original Taksim Square and Gezi Park protesters, make their way back, or indeed any of the union protesters that we're expecting to try and make their way towards Taksim Square later in the day. And of course, in Gezi Park itself, well, work has already begun on the projects that the Prime Minister has outlined there. That park is now entirely clear of the tent city that had been set up more than 2 weeks ago now. But I want to tell you a little bit as well about what is going on here at the headquarters of one of those labour federations that has called today's one-day strike. It's a one-day strike, yes, in support of the Taksim Square protesters who were ousted from that area over the weekend, but it is also an indication that the original agenda of the protest has grown much wider to include broader demands, including the demands of these left-wing unions who want greater union rights and, like many other groups, want a less authoritarian style of government and certainly don't want what they suspect Prime Minister Erdogan is involved in, and that's mixing religion with politics. Now, numbers here right now are pretty thin, but that, they say organisers, is not a worry, because what has been happening in the course of the morning and early afternoon is that workers have been meeting in their workplaces with union representatives, and what we expect them to do in about an hour's time from now is head from their workplaces, converge here and in 2 other spots around Istanbul, and from there they will coordinate and try and make their way to Taksim Square. Now, we do know that riot police are on alert there, but also en route as well. About 100 yards down this street, in fact, already 2 water cannons are positioned. It does seem likely that if protesters, union protesters today, try and get to central Istanbul, they will be prevented, Christine.
The president-elect of Iran, Hassan Rouhani, has told his country's people that the electoral promises, I will not forget them. Rouhani made these remarks while addressing a packed press conference in Tehran. The new Iranian leader also spoke about improving close ties with neighboring countries while making reference to the current civil war raging in neighboring Syria. Details of that story from CNN's Christiana Mampo.
What he said during the press conference, and then we can talk more about it.
Your government, that means the government of prudence and hope, as it has promised, will be acting in line with salvaging the country's economy, the revival of moralities, and constructive interaction with the world. The government will be adopting a moderate policy and will pursue the national goals accordingly.
Christy, there's an incredibly important statement, and just in the last minute, he has further elaborated on that as he was asked a question about the economy and particularly about foreign policy. And he said, and let me quote a little bit here, he says, the new government feels that this election presents a fresh opportunity, a chance for a new beginning that the people of Iran have created by their vote. We hope that all the continuation that we do in this regard of foreign policy will be able to have an interaction with the rest of the world that will be fruitful not only for Iran but also for countries in the region and the rest of the world. So I think that is a really important first message from the new president-elect, talking about what he will do inside his country to try to revive the economy. He hasn't given full details. He says he's going to wait, to when the time is correct. Obviously, he's not fully taken office yet. And he's very, very clearly sent, in this his first public message, a message of moderation in terms of how he intends to have a government run its foreign policy. Now, we do know, of course, that it's not all in the president's hands. It is in the supreme leader's hands. But clearly, he's spoken to the supreme leader, and this comes at a very important time in Iran's current political situation, both its dire economy and its isolation from the West, and, of course, the potential crisis over Iran's nuclear program. Christy Liu?
CNN's Christian Amanpour there on the president-elect of Iran, Hassan Rouhani, who promises to stick to his election promises. We'll take another break. Sports is next. To some footballing news. On either side of halftime, from Europe-based stars Abdelaziz Barada and Yunus Belhanda condemned the Gambia to their fourth defeat in 5 World Cup qualifying outings. The Scorpions were beaten 2-0 by North Africa outfits Morocco in Marrakesh. Babakar Senghor reports the defeat extended the Scorpions' winless run in senior competitive games to more than 2 years.
Scorpions' last tasted victory in a competitive game, and the barren run continued in Marrakesh, even when a side resembled, in all of its elements, the very imprint of the team that finished the 2007 Africa Youth Championship in Congo in 3rd place, and won tutored by the affable and mild-mannered Peter Bonu Johnson. Bonu made a number of changes to a side that lost 3-0 at home to Ivory Coast, with Italy-based forward Ali Sow coming in place of the missing Modou Cissé. And the most significant of those changes saw highly rated Armed Forces FC goalkeeper Boubacar Sanyang replacing the erratic Christopher Allen. Time will tell whether this extremely gifted former Brikama United shot-stopper can replicate shades of the heroics of one of the country's finest in George Loba. He was beaten twice in Marrakesh, but he considered to 2 of the brightest names in European football. The first was a goal crafted with inventiveness, a quick interplay between Yunus Belhanda and Abdelaziz Barada, who found space in the Gambian defense to score from inside the area with little under 3 minutes on the clock. Despite both sides having little to play in a group dominated by Ivory Coast, the match itself was played at a high tempo, with the Scorpions responding to that early setback with some neat passage of play and greater trust to their attack. Midway through the first half, the Scorpions had 2 glorious chances in quick succession, but failed to find the back of the net. First, Demba Savage failed to score when he was put clean through on goal, and minutes later, Cape Verona striker Ali Sow contrived to miss from yards away when the Moroccan goalkeeper parried Kenny Mansari's fierce long-range drive. So much has changed about Gambian football since the Scorpions last played in Morocco. This is a side that failed to win a competitive game since beating Namibia 3-1 in the Nations Cup qualifier in Banjul, and thoughts of